we're back. And it would be incredibly irresponsible of me, considering in the eyes of the law, of which I stated on the last episode, I'm recording these on the same day, back to back. And it would be incredibly irresponsible for me to pop open a second ceremonial energy drink at the beginning of the podcast. So I won't be doing that. Even though rumors are floating and flying that I am in fact recording this the next day and not directly after the first one. I'm not going to confirm nor deny those rumors. You can't make me. So we're just going to leave it at that. Welcome back to whatever this podcast has become. The news, or the worst year of my life, or Drew does movies. That I'm not happy about that, but I hope you enjoyed the last episode. I apologize if me rambling on about movies that I like isn't enjoyable for everyone, but I've got some terrible news. If you didn't like last episode, you're really not going to like this episode, because there will be less regular talk and significantly more movie talk. So if that's not your jam, then I think you've come to the wrong location. This is going to be the first half of the best of 2021. It's mostly going to be, and by mostly I mean exclusively going to be, all of the sort of honorable mentions, the things that didn't quite make the list or that I had a hard time cutting it down. I kind of got it down to 12, and then getting rid of the last two were very challenging. So am I happy with the way it turned out? I guess listen and find out. I'm also going to do the worst movies that I saw or know of from the year, and then we'll do the my favorites, which are sort of, you know, like we've talked about if you've listened to the previous episodes, which you can go and find the Worst Year of Our Lives podcast on Spotify and Apple Music and Google Podcast and iTunes. No, it's not. I don't know. You can find those old episodes that have all of the best of year stuff and give yourself a refresher on the, you know, listening to. I'm going to say there was 10 years and we probably did 2 episodes per. I think a couple were 3. Oh, no, that's not true, because we did the end of the top 25 for the whole decade. I'm going to say conservatively it's 23 episodes. You can go back and listen to those. Plus, we did the best of 2020. So there's also that one. But that's just how the format's going to go. So favorites are sort of like, I enjoy these a lot. Maybe they're not good enough to be considered the best movies of the year, but they're things that, like, I really enjoyed watching, would watch again. I guess they're kind of like desert island movies, but they're not really. So we'll do all that, and then the episode next week will be just the actual top 10, because when Scott and I did these previously, we ended up spending way too much time talking in depth about the movies that didn't make the list, and then by the time we got to the top 10, we were so out of energy and exhausted that we were not really elaborating quite that much on the movies we like. We liked the most. So I'm going to not do it all as one piece, and then I'll have the energy and drive and desire to actually do that properly next week. So there's that. And as this is definitely still the same day I recorded the previous episode, I'm not going to come on here and say that tragically tomorrow morning, legendary actor Gene Hackman was found dead in his home with his wife and dog. Hopefully that doesn't happen tomorrow morning when I'm not recording a podcast I said I would record on the same day. I'm saddened by that, because Gene Hackman is in quite a few like very good movies that I really like and really enjoy. And so I really hope that that is not something that has happened in the future that I somehow know about and am speaking on right now. But yeah, I mean, like The Conversation, Unforgiven, the French Connection, Young Frankenstein, Birdcage. I mean, he's the original Lex Luthor. A movie like I low-key really, really love, and I don't know how many other people have seen it or like it, which is The Quick and the Dead. Can't believe that Sam Raimi directed a Western and it's, not talked about as much as it should be. Yeah, I mean, he's got a long, huge history. And then also his final film, Welcome to Mooseport, with Ray Romano in 2004. But yeah, and then also he's in The Replacements, which is a movie I have seen way too many times. I still to this day quote it constantly. In fact, I believe there is a quote of it from me in the review of one of the movies I'm going to be mentioning. So how about them apples? Although it's not a line he says. Yeah, I hope that doesn't happen tomorrow morning, because that would be tragic. That's all I got for the news, because there's so many things to do, and I also have to leave at roughly 2 hours to go and pick up my pre-ordered copy of the Trey Parker directed and starring in Cannibal the Musical that I ordered and has taken forever to get here. So yeah, well, I'm going to powerhouse through some stuff, and then I'm going to go pick that up, and then not watch it for another year because I'm so far behind on the things I need to watch. I hope that makes everyone happy. Anywho, the All Requests Live Spectacular business is going to happen again. If you want to submit a movie, a YouTube video, a Roblox thing, anything around that you want to give me to watch, under 2 hours, or 2 hours and 10 minutes is the leeway. $50. Why did I space right there? $50 for me to watch it, and $100 if you want me to find a co-host to do it with me, so that we can have better interactions and more comedy and less serious nerd talk. PayPal.me/SyrianSoftPause is the PayPal, and you can send me the message of what you would like me to look at or watch, and I will do that. Is that everything? Is that all the news? I got a Korean drink. It's a TWYOOL, TEAZLE, or ZLE. You know how it is. It's a craft blended iced tea, 0 sugar. It's a yuja and green tea. And when I got it, I thought it was something. I thought it was yuzu. And yuja is what I got, which I can only assume is Korean for lemon, because there are lemons all over this fucking bottle. So it is green tea, and I'm not a huge fan of green tea, but here we are, being responsible and not drinking another energy drink live. So, and... yeah, it's aight. It's a little more green tea-y than I would like, but I guess I should have known that going in. There's also an exceptional TWYOOL Zero that is a grapefruit black tea, which I also have in the fridge, and maybe should have chosen that one, but it is also very delicious. Yeah, moving on. So now I'm just going to start reading off the list. So these are the movies that were released in 2021. Typically, we would look at the IMDb listing of, like... Was that my chair? No, it was my chair. Typically, we would be looking up at the IMDb when it got released formally, because, sometimes things get released, like, November or October of the year previously, or maybe in January the year after, but they were technically completed and distributed in that year. I didn't give a shit about that anymore. I just went off of the letter, like when the letterbox year said it was, because I used that way more than IMDb. So if there are incorrect statements, you can take it up with somebody else, because it's not going to be me. Yeah, so just like a giant list of the things that I thought were good or enjoyable or entertaining that just also needed to get a little bit of a mention, other than the main 10 that are on the actual best of. I mean, maybe these are some of them might be just like unpopular opinions, but I'm trying to change my like sort of stance on how I enjoy film, because I do feel like a lot of the time I do get swayed by other people's sort of reviews of things, or, you know, like a Metacritic rating or a Letterboxd rating or whatever. And then either I don't watch something right away that I in theory would really like, or I never watch it, or I kind of go in with like already. Do you hear that fucking cat? Shut the fuck up. Or like a very skewed view, and like I'm already thinking, okay, I'm in theory I'm supposed to hate this or not like it, so I'm gonna go in knowing I'm not gonna like it. And so I don't like doing that anymore. I'm very much trying to change my opinion on things, and if I think something is like at least watchable or like, you know, relatively okay, then I'm gonna stop being so negative about it. Which leads me to my top 3 movies, like the movies that I've listed for the honorable mentions. That'd be Spider-Man No Way Home, The Suicide Squad, and Shang-Chi and the Ten Rings, which I'm sure I should be like embarrassed about saying, but I mean, listen, Spider-Man was very much fan service, and it is exactly the kind of fan service that you want and need. Like, it's a real, like, I sit there and shut my brain off, and I just enjoy everything I'm seeing on screen. Is it a perfect movie? No, but that's not the point of it. It's in just enjoyment and fun, and rewatching it, I can rewatch it and I'd still be entertained. That's kind of the point. The Suicide Squad obviously was like the James Gunn jump over to the DC universe, and he brought his James Gunn charm to the movie. And you know what? Like, it's got some genuine laughs to it. It's got some real good visuals. Like, you know, it's a lot more of a comic book movie than it is of a, like, we're trying to make this dark, serious 4-hour Batman movie that nobody wants to see, and then you have to re-edit 4 times. You know, like, it's back to like really treating comic books like what comic books should be, with James Gunn's comedy in it. So like, it was really enjoyable. And then Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, which is funny because I was like, 9 rings? 12 rings? I'm like, no, it's got to be an even number because they're on both arms. So then I was like, okay, it's got to be 12 rings. So I wrote down Shang-Chi and the 12 rings. And then when I brought it up on Letterboxd, I was like, 10, too many. So, the reason I mentioned this one is because, like, I thought the stunt work and the martial arts on this was like really, really good. Like, it was very Jackie Chan, Crouching Tiger-esque. I'm not saying it's as good as those, because those are fucking incredible. But, like, you know, it definitely had the, like, feel of like those old school Hong Kong kind of like you know, fighting movies. The only bad thing that really goes with that is that, yeah, there's a lot of that, but then there's just like very bad CGI stuff. Some in most, like, you know, you do a kick and somebody does like a 4 twirls and then hits a wall, lands on the ground, and they're fine. Like, that stuff kind of sucks, but you know, for the most part, like the bus fight was incredible. And then like I really enjoyed some of the creature design and like the sort of the historical like mythology and everything of the world that they had kind of built I thought was really cool. And then obviously there was noted crybaby Simu Liu, who I did not enjoy, and then, as I've stated on this podcast several times, my girl Aquafina, who can get this. But also like Michelle Yeoh was awesome. I was so glad that she was in it because she's incredible. And then like it's much more enjoyable than I thought it would be. I thought that it would be another schloggy, like bad CG, bad characters, just like dumb, awful superhero movie. But like it was genuinely a good action movie, starring a crybaby. Then there's a couple like just the Mitchells and the Machines. It's just nice when there's like another big animated movie that isn't like a Pixar or Disney trying to push their way into like, hey, we're like, give us an Academy Award. I mean, this is just a real simple, like, cool animation, fun story, like good voice work. It was just really enjoyable. Then I've got Finch, which after I wrote it and then I was thinking about it, I was like, I don't know how much I actually remember about the movie. I'm just here for a Tom Cruise in the sort of post-apocalyptic future. It's just kind of a thing I'm interested in. I think it's got some heartfelt moments a little bit, but like it's not. It was enjoyable, and I haven't watched it again since. I've only seen it the one time, and I wonder if I go back and watch it if I would like it more or less. Then I got noted not necessarily good director, but sometimes has a few gems up his sleeve. Alexander Aja, who did the sort of single, like, I really like isolation horror or isolation thriller sci-fi kind of stuff, and so he did Oxygen with Melanie Laurent. And I mean, I just really like, claustrophobia is a big thing for me, and being stuck in small spaces. There's also just kind of like a little bit, even though it's CG, there is a little bit of gross, like blood cuts, needles going in and out, like it's just a woman trapped inside of a cryogenic chamber and she can't get out, and she has to deal with like an AI operated system that's like following protocols and blah blah. But like, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was really unique and interesting, and I really like Melanie Laurent. She's like really good in most things. Then we got Bad Trip, which was like the Eric Andre doing Eric Andre, but also doing Jackass movie that was on Netflix. I got, how do you not love Eric Andre? It's ridiculous, lots of comedy. I mean, unfortunately, Tiffany Haddish is in it, but whatever. It's just an enjoyable, stupid movie to watch with a guy that I love. So that was fun. Then I put the Batman, The Long Halloween Part 1 and 2, which are like DC animated movies. I really hardcore stan the DC animated cinematic universe. Like, they're like, for the most part, they are like significantly better than most things DC has put out. The last couple years, they've taken a slight drop off in like the animation quality is either like really good or really like seems rushed, and then the voice acting isn't necessarily as good as it used to be. But I mean, the stories for The Long Halloween and stuff, it's still like very enjoyable, very entertaining, and I will literally watch any of the animated DC movies because they're all really good. And then could I interest you in The Alpinist, which, if you liked Free Solo, but you wanted it to be a little bit less autistic and a little bit more depressing and sad, then may I suggest to you The Alpinist. It's a guy who's actually from here where I live, and climbing mountain here, and I mean, it's mostly just Free Solo, but in snow, and the guy is a little bit more of a normal human being. Granted, Alex Honnold is also in this movie because they're talking about the guy and how the guy is sort of a little bit more of an eccentric and like on his own, doing his own thing, and just sort of yeah, anyways, if you liked Free Solo and you were like very uncomfortable with climbing a giant mountain without ropes and cables and stuff, but then wanted to have a sad ending, then watch The Alpinist. Oh yeah, so then also during COVID times or pandemic times, we got all of the South Park Paramount Plus movies, which are all like, they're all like considerably good, so very good South Park stuff. Some would say better than the last couple seasons of the show previous to that. Since they've come back, the show's a little better. But yeah, like you got the post-COVID special, the South Park spelled with a Q, vaccination special, then the post-COVID, the return of COVID special, that are all like exceptional stuff. Like if you like South Park or like used to like South Park, it's a lot more like of the traditional kind of like good quality stuff, as opposed to like, hey, we're going to tell a story that goes over the whole season involving Mr. Mr. Trump. And anyways, they're good quality stuff. If you haven't seen them, you should check them out. They're very fun. Then there's a couple of Netflix does this thing called Untold, which is like very in-depth stories about very specific events that have happened in sports. They're all mostly very good. They're like 30 for 30, but a little bit more. I don't want to say 30 for 30 is not professional, because obviously like some big name people have made 30 for 30s, but like, I don't know, the quality, the production value is just like a little bit better. Because I think they just, they have money to do it. But there are two very specific ones that were really good. One is Malice at the Palace, which, if you're not a basketball person or a sports person, that's fine. I don't have to go deep into it. But there was just like a very famous basketball game where the Pistons and the Pacers were playing each other, and a bunch of the Pacers players ended up going into the audience to fight fans who had been like throwing shit at them and saying racial slurs and those kind of things. And like, it's just like sort of the build up and then the event and then the aftermath of what happened is very well done. And then the other one is Crime and Punishment, which is about the Danbury Thrashers, who were like a lower level professional team in the US that were sort of run and operated by like some people with some sketchy pasts, and they were all about like, just like, let's take this back to the 70s, like fist fights and violence and body checking and just like mayhem and madness. And then it's just sort of about like the guy who owned it and his son and all the sort of things around this guy's past and history and stuff. And there are some very, very funny characters in this movie. And by characters, I mean real life people, but there's nobody in the world that acts or is like that. And then you see this and you're like, oh, there are real people that are like that. So it's, very, very well done. Especially like, I mean, if you don't know sports or like sports, this one's actually better to watch because it's not necessarily about hockey. It's about like the criminal pasts and stuff of the people that buy this team and run this team. It's a lot more entertaining if you are not like a big sports person. Scott and I did this on the podcast, which was Ghostbusters Afterlife. Again, fan service that was good. It wasn't over the top stupid. It had enough of the things you wanted, and it also had like a good enough story, and it was fun. You want to go to a very depressing movie, but I guess a happy depressing movie is the documentary Val, about Val Kilmer, and just sort of what his life is now ever since he got throat cancer. It's like directed by his son, and it's just sort of like showing his life now and talking about his career. And it's a tough watch if you were a fan of his movies growing up, because he was, he's a middle of the, like, he's a good enough actor. No, I don't think a lot of people consider him to be an amazing actor, but like he was in a lot of movies I watched as a kid, and teenager growing up that I really liked, especially like The Ghost in the Darkness. But his ridiculous performance in The Island of Dr. Moreau. But it's a tough watch just to see like, yeah, he's in good spirits for the most part in the movie. Like, he's living his life and he's not really like in this bad place, but there are moments of like, you can see like frustration and stress and maybe some sadness and things. And it is a very uncomfortable watch at times. There's another one that I put, Plan B. It's like a coming of age, teenage girls doing things, you know, having the sex and getting, you know, whatever. It's just like a really easy to watch, fun, enjoyable, like, yeah, coming of age teen girl movie, which in theory for me, I shouldn't be watching and enjoying, but whatever. It was fun. See, what's the next one? Oh, the documentary that's just called Seaspiracy. It's just documenting the harm that humans do to marine life, overfishing, trolling, you know, kind of wrecking the ecosystem, how we can fix it. And it's just sort of like, you know, doing some, like showing all the bad things that people do all around the world. You know, especially like, I don't know, Japan. Japan are kind of the bad guys in this movie because they just like, do a lot of things even though they're told not to do a lot of things and don't really care what anybody says about it. But then also, like, you know, China's kind of a bad guy in it, and like weirdly France is kind of a bad guy in it. So like, yeah, it's an interesting look at the oceans and fishing and markets and all that stuff. It can also be a little bit dark. I think the guy who directed it the guy who starred in it, or I'm thinking of a different movie. There is a different Seaspiracy related film where the director was a guy who I think died, but it's not this one. Yeah, just a couple other quick, like a sort of ancient forest horror one called Gaia that I really enjoyed. I thought it had like a lot of cool and unique kind of aura to it. It was really beautiful. It was shot well. Camera stuff was really beautiful. The sound design was really good. There was a lot of like very deep bass vibratones that are meant to make you uneasy. But yeah, like it was not a big budget movie. I don't think a lot of people saw it. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was really good. Then one that I wanted to mention that I thought was good, but also was a little bit disappointed by, I guess, and seems like a lot of other people were disappointed by it, which is Wolf. I think it's like a man who believes that he's a wolf, and they take him to like a clinic where it's a bunch of other people who are all convinced that they're women, or they're have something trapped inside of them. And I'm sure it's an allegory for, I don't know, a gay conversion perhaps, or something. But the concept was great. I thought visually it was pretty good, kind of dark and dank and not so happy visually. Which is nice, but I just wanted like a little bit more from it. Like I really wanted to either like really commit to like it is the thing, or just like really establish like, no, we're going in this direction and it's not. I feel like there was too much of like, well, maybe this is, and then you're like, you see the next scene and you're like, well, it's clearly not. And then the next thing they're like, but it could be. And then this is clearly establishing it's not. I just like there was a lot of like back and forth on it, and I really wanted to just commit a little bit more to that. Another decent documentary is Attica, which was about the Attica prison riots, which I didn't really actually know any stories. Like I just knew the word because of Al Pacino screaming Attica in Serpico? Is it Serpico? I don't know. But yeah, it's that I didn't know anything about it. I just knew that there was a police riot, or there was a prison riot. And so like watching how like just horrible the situation was pretty hard, pretty rough. Then what else do I got? I got another documentary, which is Pennywise, the Story of It. It's not necessarily an amazing documentary per se, but it is just sort of like a love letter to Tim Curry's sort of like performance and acting in the movie. Like a lot of it is just like how incredible he was at doing it and becoming Pennywise, which is like just, you know, just as enjoyable. Like I didn't really necessarily need like a big story about the creating of the movie and the blah, blah, blah. Like, I mean, there is some of that, but like, then, you know, there is a lot of just like how he took the performance into his own and molded it and crafted it into what it was. And then his performance and his acting and everything. So yeah, it was just kind of a love letter to Tim Curry, which was really nice because Tim Curry was for a long time, like a very, very top level, like wacky kind of villain character that did a lot of great movies in like the 80s and 90s. And it was just nice to see them sort of like recognize that in the film. Then there's a animated film called The Spine of Night, which is sort of like a dark fantasy, magic, kind of like ultra violent, like a heavy metal kind of homage type movie that just had like a lot of like really crazy, wacky stuff in it with some like good violence and cool creatures and visual looks and yeah, like just an easy, enjoyable, violent animated film. A fun Korean disaster movie called Sinkhole, which is just about a sinkhole opening up under a apartment tower and sucking the tower into the ground, and then all the people being stuck in there and, you know, trying to figure out how to get out. And well, like just like a really fun, dramatic comedy kind of movie. The cat is currently trying to destroy the door to get in the room, but I can't trust him in here because he makes too much noise and gets in the way, especially when I'm trying to like go back and forth doing things. So if you hear noise of attempted murder, it's the cat. So then I got, what's going on here? Man, there was a lot of documentaries, which I guess makes sense because when all this stuff was made during the pandemic, you couldn't like film actors and do things. The River Runner, it's about a guy who is like a legendary kayaker, and he wants to just do these like extreme whitewater expedition that he's been trying to do forever, but he gets a brain tumor, and yeah, it's just sort of like the journey of overcoming the odds, and the White River stuff is like pretty dangerous and pretty hectic, and so it's like a lot of scary documentaries made this year because everybody was scared because they didn't know what the hell was going on. What's next on my list? You know, I don't have glasses on. I should really put my glasses on. Burning, which is a documentary about all of the wildfires in Australia that happened that year. You know, pretty heartbreaking stuff, especially to see like a lot of animals that have been, you know, horrendously injured or dead, or, you know, like just all the things that happened to everybody down there is like, you know, it's just like a very depressing but good documentary. Oh yeah, I should have wrote a note about this one because so Intrigald, it is a Romanian, I believe. It is a Romanian film. I was told about this by Scott via Adam, and I thought it was going to be more than what it was, but after the fact, I have thought about it quite a bit. Like, it's been in my head on and off since I watched it. So it obviously, like, I enjoyed it more than I thought I did. Yeah, it's three humanitarians who are going on a mission to like a remote village in Transylvania to sort of like help, and their vehicle gets stuck on this like big muddy mountain road that they can't get out of, and then a few like random like a guy and his son show up, and they try to help them, and they're like distrusting of them because they're like gypsies, and then they try to like, okay, well, we're just gonna walk through the woods till we find something, and then like there's not a lot of like big moments, like there's no real conflict other than just like they're frustrated that they're stuck, and then they kind of get, you know, when you're confined in a space with somebody and you need to argue and you can't get your words out and express yourself. So then you just sort of like lash out at each other, and then there's like a creepy old man, and the ending is very gross, especially if you're not a big fan of naked old men. But like, yeah, the atmosphere was great. And yeah, like it was it was engaging, like it wasn't boring. But yeah, the extended bathing nude scene of an elderly gypsy is not necessarily something I need at the end of my movie. But maybe that's just me. Sorry, I am reading an email. That I needed to read. So what did I go? I put Spencer on here, which is like the Lady Diana biopic, but only because I think that the performance of it by Kristen Stewart is very, very like powerful, like strong. Like the movie itself, I don't think is really that entertaining, but her performance is incredible. So I just wanted to mention that, like, I think it's real, like she did a really good job. I just don't think the movie was that engaging, and they really, like, learning a lot more of the story, whether or not it's true or not true, is fine, because like I don't think I was old enough to really realize like the actual things that were all happening. And I just knew that like, oh, she was the princess. Oh, now she's not married to him. Oh, now she's dead. I think that's all I kind of knew. There was like a weird Sia-esque music video in the second half that she like does a performance of, and I was like, I don't care for, like, this is very strange. And then they sure did take a lot of liberties in the casting of Charles, because the actor was ugly, but he wasn't the ugliest man that's ever been photographed like real Charles is. And his ears were too small, was my argument for that movie. Then we got the English version remake starring Jake Gyllenhaal of The Guilty, which I said on the previous episode of last week's episode on the pod, is, it would be an incredibly good movie. It would be a great movie if there wasn't an already better original non-English language version of the movie. It was good. I liked it. I love Jake Gyllenhaal, but there is a much better version of it that has a darker ending. Surprise, surprise, because in America you can't have dark endings in your movies. That is significantly better. So like that's why it's not higher on, like, in the list or anything. There was if you're familiar with the Netflix show Kingdom, which is a Korean zombie show, there was a standalone movie kind of like spin-off from it called A Shin of the North, which involved a tiger, which was pretty decent. And you don't have to watch the show to enjoy it. You can just watch it. It ties in just like very little. A movie I actually enjoyed more than I thought I would, considering what it was, is The Dig, with Carey Mulligan and Wreck-It Ralph Fiennes. It's just archaeology and historic discoveries in Britain's past in this field that this woman owns, and then there's a bunch of like bureaucracy and bullshit, and she's dealing with the fact that all these people are trying to do things for her and she doesn't need them. And Mulligan and Fiennes are both incredible in it. They're just very, very good. You'd think it's a very stale movie, boring, but like enough happens that it's like entertaining, and like I enjoyed it. Then there's is it Rotoscope? I think it's actually maybe just animation. I don't know if it's specifically Rotoscope. It's like an animated film called Flea, which is just sort of a biographical story being told by a guy who, as a child, is a refugee of Afghanistan and flees to I don't remember what country, a country in Europe. And it's just sort of his story of struggling with like the trauma of his past, of his childhood in Afghanistan, but then the fact that he's gay and he's growing up in, I'm going to assume Germany. And where's the director from? We'll just say it's from wherever the director's from. Oh, Danish. Well, there you go. He's from Denmark. And he goes to Denmark, and then he's, so he's dealing with his past trauma from obviously being in a war-torn country that he needed to flee, and then now growing up being a gay man in Denmark, but also as an immigrant and a Muslim, and blah, blah, like it's kind of powerful. It's got some really like heartbreaking story elements to it, and visually it is really nice. I don't know if it's specifically rotoscope, but it is that style of animation where it looks like it is animated over real people moving, but could be, couldn't be. I don't know. And then I mentioned on the previous episode when I was doing the best that I've seen since we made the list, when I mentioned The Family Bel-Air, which I said was the original French language version of Coda. So obviously if I think that movie's better, Coda's here in the same vein as The Guilty, whereas like, yeah, it's a really good movie and it's really enjoyable. And I honestly think maybe it would have been in my top 10, maybe, if there wasn't a better version of it in a foreign language that was made several years before. That's, I don't have to go too deep in it because I went too deep in it last year. Now we're kind of like the ones that are like the sort of later cuts for me, not the latest cuts, because those are on coming up. But these are like the ones that were like, I'd like to put this on there, but I know it's not competing with everything else. 14 Peaks. So it's a documentary about, in 2019, a Nepalese climber attempted to do all of the 14 highest peaks in the world in 7 months. And it's just sort of a real like perseverance, overcoming the odds, like, human spirit, motivation, blah, blah. But like, it's really visually, it's beautiful. I mean, you're obviously seeing like all of these enormous, huge mountain chains all over the world that he's climbing and competing against, like, nature. And like, yeah, it's very beautiful, very well done. Then I got 7 Prisoners, which again was a thing that I was told by Scott from Adam. That is a Brazilian, like, overcoming human trafficking and forced labor of like these youth in the area, and like they're kind of trapped in this junkyard where they live and sleep, and then one of them sort of becomes the favorite of the guy who's in charge, and he sort of gets more opportunities to have some freedoms, but then he's kind of struggling with the choice of like, do I stay here and just put up with it because my life isn't that horrible, but I'm also put in a situation where I have to be like kind of a bad guy, or do I try to get out and leave and flee because the guy keeps saying like, once you've earned this X amount of money, I will let you go, but then is he ever going to let them go? But yeah, very great performances, very gritty, and like dark movie. What else is on the list? Scott and I did Teton on the podcast, which we both liked. I'm probably going to assume that he would have it on his list, maybe, or it would be a very late cut for him. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It left me really wanting more. I mean, you can go listen to the episode that Scott and I did where for the all request where we did it. It's got some crazy, bizarre, weird stuff in it that is really fun and wacky and shit. But I don't know. I think I just really liked the director's previous film, Raw, a lot better, a lot more, and so I was maybe had my expectations a little bit too high, and I just wasn't as thrilled with it. It's not a bad movie, and I still enjoyed it, obviously, because it's on the list, but I was kind of hoping for a little bit more to it. Okay, and here's one that is maybe I guess controversial in the fact that it's not really, I think it's not necessarily looked at as being like good. It does have a low rating. I mean, if you go by the things that I literally said earlier, where I don't go by other people's reviews or Metacritics or Letterboxd reviews of stuff, it's low. It's The Little Things, It's Denzel, Rami Malek, and Jared Leto. And it's like there's a guy who's a killer, and we need to track him down and find him. And there's nothing really new going on. I mean, it's Denzel who, despite the fact that he's not trying his hardest in this movie, he's not trying his least hardest, but he's not trying his hardest. And Rami Malek is maybe miscast in it, but I still didn't think he was terrible. But it's more so the fact that like it's an enjoyable bad movie that can be really fun to watch with people, because Jared Leto is in it, and he, spoiler alert, is the killer, and he looks absolutely disgusting in this movie. Like there's no way he was not intentionally like wearing poopy underwear and like just getting his hair wet but not washing it, and probably not brushing his teeth. Like the fact that he looks so disgusting in this movie is absolutely worth the watch, because he's chewing scenery, he's overacting, he's doing everything Jared Leto does while looking like a pig. So I know it's not a good movie, but it is an enjoyably bad movie. Then to go from there, I went to On the Count of Three, which is the directorial debut of Gerard Carmichael, if you know who he is. And it's him starring with Christopher Abbott, and it is about sort of a down on his luck kind of guy who realizes that like the only way to kind of like move on from everything is he's just going to kill himself. And he goes and talks to his friend who has just gotten over a failed attempted suicide, and they agree to, why don't we just kill each other? Like, we're just going to go to this place, we'll both get guns, we're both going to go and we'll have one last day, and then we're going to go kill each other. And then over the course of their like journey together to get to the suicide plan, just like unfinished business comes up and second thoughts, and then kind of realize like, hey, maybe we aren't as good of friends as we thought we were, and we don't actually like each other. And yeah, so like it's dark, it's got comedy to it. There is a very funny scene of Christopher Abbott in a car drunk driving and just singing Papa Roach at the top of his lungs, which is awesome. But yeah, it's a really good watch. It's like really, funny and depressing, but like well performed, and like, not a big budget movie. Then, as I said before, I like to throw out like shouts to like horror movies, even if I know they're not good, but they're entertaining. So there was one that's, I think found footage movies can be really divisive and unoriginal and not so creative at times, but then also they can have just like some of the best concepts for a movie that like most people wouldn't even think are possible or like would make sense to be a movie. But this one is called The Deep House, and it is a couple of like urban explorers. They dive down into a lake in France where they're like YouTubers, I guess. Urban explorers. They dive into a lake in France because there is a submerged underwater house that's like notorious and has been there forever. And they want to go down and be like the first people to actually make it like all the way down to the house and film inside and, like explore it. And, it's really hard to pick apart found footage because going in, like, you shouldn't be expecting high quality anything, right? Usually it's the actors that they found can perform the best in these situations, holding a camera, looking directly at a camera, having conversations while avoiding the camera, that kind of stuff. So it's really hard to pick it apart, because it is. But it's, this was interesting. Like, it's a completely underwater house where you're doing a found footage, like, spooky movie. So there is a lot of uniqueness to it. this is the Replacements reference, which is underwater and tight spaces. Thanks, Jumbo. You can just rock me to sleep tonight. I don't know if people know that reference, but that's the reference. Yeah, I mean, I like when things take a different approach to doing something and it's entertaining. This had a very dark ending. I was not expecting it to be as dark, and by dark I mean like sinister and horrific, as opposed to visually you can't see because you're underwater. And then the other one is My Son, which, if you're not familiar with this movie, again, this falls under sort of the same guise as the Little Things, whereas like, is it a good movie? I don't know. Like, it's pretty by the book, cookie cutter, like your Takens and your what's that Joaquin Phoenix one? You Were Never Here. You Were Never Really Here, or like Prisoners or stuff. It's like a guy and his wife, a guy and his ex-wife. I really should have looked at before. Ex-wife. Yeah, sorry. So his ex-wife calls him that their son's gone missing when they were on like a camping thing, and so he shows up and tries to find out where their son is, and then he has to like the investigation, and then he kind of like takes the law into his own hands. But the cool thing about the movie is that it stars James McAvoy, who is one of my favorite actors, and he was not given a script that had dialogue written on it for the characters. So he only knew the plot pieces. He didn't know, like what specifically he was supposed to be saying to like move the story forward. So a lot of it is reactionary or just plot based. And as much as it's a very just like standard, normal, like, nothing fancy going on movie, the whole concept of the fact that like this is him acting, this is him doing the performance based on his own abilities and his own understanding is just like a very cool and unique concept to me. So like I really did enjoy that part of it. Does it fully work throughout the whole movie? Yes and no, because he is an incredible actor. And I think maybe given to a less capable person, it would have maybe floundered. But because he is believable as in the role, and I like love him as an actor and think he's really good, it does work. So he is capable of like moving through the story and the dialogue to get to the next piece. So I just thought that was something that I'd like to give a shout out to, because it's like pretty weird. And then what else do I got here? This isn't technically a movie as much as it is a like one part, like one season series, but it was really good and I really enjoyed it. It was called The Silent Sea. Yes, it's Korean, but that doesn't have anything to do with anything. I mean, I like unique sci-fi. I like the ideas. I like that things can, kind of be conceptually vague for the sake of like, use your imagination. I do like that. It's like there's a moon base that the Korean government has been using to, I know it sounds stupid, but they've been trying to harvest moon water, because Earth's water supplies are sort of shriveling a little bit. But then when they are doing that, it turns out that the moon water, it can actually be used more as like an energy supply, and also possibly as a weapon. So before the it's a series, so I can't remember every exact detail as much, but like before anybody else can get to the moon to sort of like either take over the abandoned station, or maybe it's getting destroyed, I don't remember which one, they send a crew up there to go and retrieve all of the remaining moon water and bring it back. And then of course like tragic stuff happens because it's space and sci-fi and nothing good ever happens. But yeah, like it just like there's a lot of very space scary things that happen, and like the character interactions with each other and the acting and stuff is all like quite well done. It doesn't really have a lot of like huge named actors in it. It's got a few people that like I would recognize because I watch a lot of Korean stuff, but like it's, you know, it kind of kept it like to a newer crop of people. But yeah, it's really good. I mean, I know it's not a movie, but I just wanted to give it a shout out for that. Then also with sea in the title, The Burning Sea, which is a Norwegian disaster movie, and it's kind of the third one in an unofficial threequel, but they're not related. But well, this one's not related. The first two are, but this one's not. But it's also just sort of like all in the same disaster universe, the Norwegian disaster universe. The Burning Sea. So yeah, it's like the first one was the quake or the wave. I should have looked that up. One of the two is the first one, and then the second one is the other one. Did I put it on here? Yeah, it's right there. I guess I can just look it up. So that's 2021. The quake is 2018, and the other one, the wave, is 2015. So the wave is first. The wave, the quake, and then the Burning Sea. So yeah, it's like a an oil platform off the Norwegian coasts, and there's like a, you know, like a disaster. Things start happening under the ocean, and then oil rigs get lit on fire, and it's just like a wild and wacky adventure, but like done kind of in serious, because they are Scandinavian, so it's not like they're going to be doing, you know, big Mark Wahlberg, Peter Berg levels of like action stunts and explosions. And then turns out that there were actually, you know, Chechnyan rebels that were secretly living underneath the platform and are now trying to take it over so that they can mine unobtainium and then help Putin or something, even though none of those things connect. But yeah, like it's pretty like serious, straightforward, even though it is a disaster movie. All three of them are like that. So I highly recommend them. They are pretty enjoyable to watch. Like they're a lot different of a scale than you would see in like an American, you know, like a Geostorm or Greenland, or is there a third one that Gerard Butler is in? No. Yes? Did I get both, or is there a third? I mean, there is Greenland 2 coming out, but that's not Plane. We'll call it a win. Plane is the third one in that trilogy. Yeah, I mean, they're just it's like it's got a lot of cool concept to it and a lot of like human drama. Then of course, because why wouldn't there be another Korean one? There is another Korean one called Hostage Missing Celebrity, which is just Hwang Jung-min, who's like a very, very, very famous, is he the most famous? I don't know if he's the most famous, but he's one of the most famous actors in Korea right now. He was in The Wailing, he was in New World, which I mentioned last time. Yeah, he's in pretty much like every big TV show and movie that is in Korea, and he's essentially playing himself, and it's based on a Chinese movie, which I haven't seen yet, but I will see because I enjoyed this one so much, where like, yeah, they kidnap him and another person, and then because he's known for his like actiony roles, the kidnappers are kind of like expecting him to be able to be this like ultimate badass who can like do things, and then he's not, because he's an actor and he's not actually that guy. And then it's funny because in Korean culture they are very much like, they don't, if you in your personal life at any point in your history and in your past or anything, do anything that's deemed as like embarrassing or like makes you look like a bad person, or like even like minor mistakes or bad things, like a lot of people get canceled in Korea for like, well, when they were in grade 3 they bullied their friend, they bullied somebody in their class, and now they're like in their 30s and they're like, well, you're a bad person, so you don't get to do movies anymore. there's very much that culture there. And so in this movie, even though he's playing himself as a fictionalized version of himself, he like is kind of a dick and makes some bad decisions that kind of don't make him look like a good person. And you're like, that's such a weird thing to like, because there's going to be people that watch that movie and see like, oh, you're playing yourself and you're doing these bad things as yourself. That must mean you're a bad person. It's just like a bold move for him to take. But yeah, I mean, there's some good violence in it. There's some good action. There's like good comedy in it as well. So like, yeah, it was really enjoyable. I'd never heard of it before until I think I don't know. I think it's on Tubi because I am a Tubi boy, and it just like randomly was like, hey, you might like this. And I was like, yeah, sure. Why not? And I watched it. I was like, yeah, this is really fun. And it's also not very long, which I like. So what else do I have here? I'm going to do that one last because I probably got some explaining to do. Did the silence see? Next one I have is one that was still good, but I was slightly disappointed by, which was Lamb. It's an Icelandic movie by a guy who hadn't done a whole lot, but it has Noomi Rapace, who I love and think is an amazing actress. And everything from the promotional material, the photo and stuff of the movie, you're like, okay, this is going to be like some very, very wacky, wild, like there'll be some TF and there'll be like whatever. And it, not to say I was disappointed because I obviously still enjoyed it. And it's like very much a like slow burn kind of psychological thing, which I do really enjoy. The ending was a little bit less satisfying than I would have liked, like especially what they had been building towards, and the ending doesn't fit as nicely as I wanted it to. I just kind of wanted a little bit more from it. I don't ask me what I wanted from it, like what specifically. I just it was missing something. But it's like a couple who are mourning the loss of a child, and they have sheep because that's all you do in Iceland apparently, between this and rams. And like they live on a remote farm, but then there's like a weird like sheep human hybrid baby that's born, and then she sort of like replaces their dead child with the lamb baby, and the husband is less than enthusiastic about it, but then kind of like subtle weird things start happening, and then I wanted a little bit more like of either a wild and crazy thing or a more satisfying realistic ending than what we got. There's a interesting and good British chef drama called Boiling Point, which stars Stephen Graham, and like it's a good movie. It's enjoyable. Like the pace moves really well. It's really hectic and manic at times because it's in like a very popular restaurant, and you're sort of in London, and you're watching like all the characters that are like the sous chefs and the dishwashers and the prep chefs, and like they're all, you're following through as all this like busy fancy restaurant happens. But like the kind of the cool thing about it is that it was, obviously filmed during COVID, and it was a series of oneers that they filmed over a couple of nights, and they just like didn't have enough time to really like do a second, like on the first night, like can't do a second take, so we just have to use what we have here, and then the next night kind of fix the problems we have. And there's not a lot of like cutting and inserts, and like you're literally just following the characters through this entire kitchen and dining area, and just like everything's moving all at once, and it's just like a high pressure situation. And Stephen Graham's like the head chef of the restaurant, and like it's just like for him it's just like this incredibly like stressful constant flow of just like high stress, high tension, and it's like really, really manic. But it was like because of their like real lack of ability to shoot more scenes and do second takes and do more stuff, that the camera work is incredibly shaky, which kind of at times was a little off-putting for me, because makes me kind of feel like it's cheap, even though it doesn't, like, sometimes I'm you can hear that, right? Shut up. I'm kind of the person that, like, I don't really like handheld camera work unless it's like, I don't know, it's hard. Let's not get into that. That's a really long and hard conversation for me to say, like, hey, I this and this and this and this. But, like, I'm not a big fan of handheld camera work in certain situations. And this is one where I was, like, not really that thrilled with the handheld work, but I understand the reasoning why it was handheld, and there's not a lot else you could have done with it. So I understand it, but I also didn't care for it. Then what do we got here? Literally, like, a director whose work is, like, I love it, and it's also just, like, he's the most insane human being that's, like, ever lived. Paul Verhoeven put out a movie in 2021 called Benedetta, and it is, to say the least, batshit bonkers. So it's a 17th century nun who, during, like, a case of enlightenment, discovers her lesbian urges, but of course is obviously, like, forbidden from doing it. But she begins to get, like, religious visions that she, like, starts to try and convince people are true and are going to happen. And she's sort of like the black sheep of the nunnery, and they don't believe her, and or like half the time they don't believe her, and then eventually some stuff starts to happen where they're like, oh, maybe you should be the head of the church, of the nunnery. And then when they put her in charge of the nunnery, it gets real sexy. And there is a hilarious scene involving let me see if did I write down the actual thing. Shut up, stupid cat. I mean, yeah, I didn't write it down, but, like, it was at times just the most ridiculous comedy I've ever seen, unintentionally. And then at times it was just straight up softcore porn. I really hope that in 15 years, everybody describes this as a dark comedy that no one got at the time, like they did with Showgirls. There is a carving of a religious artifact into a wooden dildo, and then use your imagination, you perverts. But I love Paul Verhoeven's stuff because he's such a wacky lunatic that, like, you never know what you're going to get from his work. And that's what I like about him. Let's see. I did On the Count of Three. I did My Son. Am I going to do... Is that one of my last cuts? Maybe that was one of my last cuts, and I'll talk about it at the end. Okay, yeah. I everything that I have left is sort of like the things that were... the very last things I had to cut, and then the last two at the bottom were 11 and 12 that I cut. So I guess I'll move on to those. After Yang, had a lot of pieces I really liked, especially, like, conceptually. I was very interested in it, but. No, not but. Let me finish my saying. Okay. Yeah. So it's like there's it's in the future, and there are AI android companions that you can get as, like, a replacement for a dead kid, or, like, if you only have one kid and you want to have your kid, like, have a sibling for your child, you can get one of these things. And they are, like, essentially, like, completely part of your life. Like, they are just as human. Like, you can't really tell that they're AI. It's not like your other typical movies where, like, it's an android. But he begins to malfunction And then the father, who is played by Colin Farrell, who again is one of my favorite actors of all time, and Jodie Turner-Smith, who I mentioned last episode for Queen and Slim. They're trying to find a way to like fix him for their daughter, but like then he sort of like realizes through the act of trying to assist his daughter to have her companion back that like he's kind of living a worthless life. Like he's just like wasting his time, and he's not being like a good husband, a good father. He's not really enjoying the world around him. He's just going through the motions. And so that kind of makes him realize like, hey, maybe we don't need the Yang is what the name of the AI is called. Like maybe we don't need Yang anymore. Like we can just be a family. We can do things together. And so like, you know, it's a real like philosophical thing about just sort of like being present, being with your family, like, you know, prioritizing the things in your life that you care about and that are important to you. I did really like that it was obviously the future, but it wasn't like a wacky, like flying cars and, you know, hologram thing. Like it wasn't like this crazy, super over the top, like a Minority Report type of future with that kind of stuff, or like iRobot. It was a lot more like subtle, like what's a realistic look into the future? Like in 20, 30, 40, 50 years, like what's an actual real thing that we could have, as opposed to like, you know, technology that's not going to even be available ever, or if it is, it'll be well past our time. So I did like that it was like a very subdued, very subtle future. It did get a little bit too philosophical for my dumb idiot damaged brain in the middle. That was kind of not as interesting or not as entertaining, at least for me. I understand why it would be nice and for other people who are like think at a higher level than I do, or I guess like maybe I wasn't fully paying attention because I was kind of like out of it at that point. But there is a lot of very much like the universe and the creator and for planes outside of our existence. Like there was a little bit of that, which I kind of didn't really like as much, which is why it was like one of the final cuts for me. Then these three. No, I'll do that. Dune Part 1. I mean, it's visually really nice. It's got an amazing score. It's got amazing cinematography. Denis Villeneuve's incredible. You know, some of the acting is only okay. There's just too many moving parts. It was a million things going on at once, and it just, you know, over bloated, I guess I would say. And I just, you know, it's good. It's not amazing. I don't think it's not Villeneuve's worst movie, which, you know, that's hard to say what it actually is, but it's not, you know, just doesn't make the list for me, unfortunately. And I wasn't necessarily a big fan of the original. And then when we get to whenever I do the next 2024, Dune 2, I also thought was good, not great. I think it's just you got too much subject matter that you're trying to cram into one movie, which then makes the runtime incredibly long. And sometimes by the time you get towards the third act, and you're kind of like, I've forgotten half the things that were done in the first act. And so that's kind of why it's not that I don't like it. It's not one of the best, I don't think. Then you got The Rescue, which is a documentary about those Thai boys that were, Taiwan. Yeah, the Thai boys that got the soccer team that got trapped in the flooded caves. It was really good. I thought that it was well done. They did a really good job of like... I made the exact same joke on this one that I did on the whatever the other one was. Which is, thanks, Jumbo. You can just rock me to sleep tonight. Yeah, so even though like I obviously knew the story, I knew the result, and also because earlier in the year there was that Ron Howard like movie about it with like Viggo Morgenstein and Joel Edgerton and someone else. So like obviously I knew all of it, but like it was pretty intense. There were like some pretty good visuals, especially considering like you don't have the actual like some of the footage you don't have from the actual rescue. But yeah, I mean it's compelling. But like it's it's a really well done documentary. I really thought it was intense, and yeah, I wish I didn't have to cut it because it's one of the better. It's one of the more intriguing and suspenseful and traumatic documentaries I've seen, but like there's just too many other things that I want to put above it. I don't think there's any. Is there any? There is a documentary that beat it out on the top 10. So we'll get to that when we get to that. Then again, like I really like shouting out like what I think are good horror movies, and this one is a Philippine Indonesian. I don't know. A something from a Southeast Asian country. Let's say I should have. Well, reading the name, I'm gonna say it's Thailand, but it could also be Indonesia. So let's go with that. No, Thailand. The Medium is one that really stuck with me, and I really was not expecting that kind of lasting impact for me. So like it's so I will embarrassingly admit that I thought this was a documentary for the first like maybe 35 minutes, because it like the story is it's a documentary crew that goes to do an interview with like a shaman who is believed to inhabit by the spirit of like this goddess, and her niece displays like starts like acting weird and having these bizarre behaviors, and then like this shaman person, there's like a ceremony that goes wrong, and then it's just like there's a lot of like their religious stuff happening, and it's just nice that there was sort of like a possession demonic kind of story that isn't Christianity based, because there's some, but there's not as many. And especially it's nice that it's like this forested, like old world kind of, not a big, it's like it's a small village, and there's not a lot of like big events that happen in the movie. But like it's got a very unique atmosphere, and like the specific regional visuals, especially like the actual like ceremonies and the cultural presentation-y kind of stuff, is like very, very cool. And then eventually I realized like, oh, this isn't a documentary, it's an actual movie. It's just that like none of the people in the movie are actors. They're all sort of like, or like they are actors, but they're not like doing 100 movies every year. They're just doing like, oh, I do like a play or a stage performance like once or twice a year, and that's it. And so like that's why it seemed like, because everybody's kind of in the nicest way, they look very normal and natural and native to the area. They're not like attractive. I mean, the niece is an actual actress, and she's very pretty and has obviously had like work done, but everybody else is like kind of schlumpy and ugly and old, and like that's why I definitely thought it was a documentary, plus the fact that it's filmed in like found footage kind of like documentary style. But yeah, it's not, it doesn't do anything new as far as like the possession side of it or the demonic side of it, but like the natural holistic vibes was like pretty cool. The acting was good and very like authentic and believable. But yeah, I can't believe I thought it was a documentary for the first like 35 minutes, and then was like, oh, this is a movie. Very stupid of me. And then on top of that, another very well done horror movie that is not reflected by its review on Letterboxd or anything else, but who the fuck doesn't like a fucking Wendigo movie? So Antlers was a big surprise for me. I really, really did not expect it to be as good as it was. And also, I mean, I love Scott Cooper. The director, Scott Cooper, is awesome. I love Crazy Heart. I love Out of the Furnace. Black Mass was really good. Hostile was really good. I wasn't as big of a fan of The Pale Blue Eye, which is 2022, which will not be mentioned on my list because it was kind of boring, but it... I really enjoy Scott Cooper's work, and my fear with movies all the time, especially horror movies, especially creature features, as they are sometimes referred, is that it's never going to be the thing you think it is. It's always an allegory for something, or it's a physical manifestation of something, or it's a internalized creature that not everyone is seeing, and then at the end there's like a twist reveal or so. Sometimes that's good, and sometimes that works, and sometimes that's enjoyable. But for me, when I'm watching creature-y kind of things, it's just nice sometimes when it is just the creature and it's just the monster, and you don't have to be like, well, does this represent loss? Does this represent fear of change? Does this represent, sometimes it is nice. There's this one, and then there's Underwater, which is just a straight up Cthulhu movie, and like a few other movies where you're just like, I'm so glad it's just a fucking Wendigo, and it is not some other kind of conceptual, but it means this. And you're like, nope, that is just the thing it's meant to be. And it's like, I really enjoy it. I don't understand why other people don't like it as much, but sure. It's got Jesse Plemons in it. It's Kerry Russell, world famous actor Graham Greene. Yeah, it's just a really enjoyable movie for me. I really like it. I don't understand why more people don't like it. Okay, what are the hard cuts? So these three movies were at one point, two of them were on the actual best of top 10, and then they all moved into, they were all in the favorite area. And then unfortunately I wanted to keep tradition of it being three favorites, because if I did more than three favorites, I could hear Scott screaming at me from beyond, and I would not want that in my house. So I cut it down to three and moved these ones over, unfortunately, to the honorable mentions. One being Mortal Kombat, which is another one of those things where it's like, is it well reviewed? No. Did people really overly enjoy it as a movie? No, but I'm not looking at it as that under that guise anymore. It was incredibly fun, ultra violent. Like, it was video game level of violent, which is exactly what you'd want when you're copying a video game that is like the most brutal thing available. I really enjoyed the visual look of it. I mean, some of the CG was bad and the green screen was bad, but like the costumes were cool. The character design was cool. The action and fighting and violence was awesome. It was like the video game again, which is awesome. Literally the only thing that I didn't like about it was just like how every single, not every single, but like a large portion of action movies or movies that feature action stunt work in them, the just like base level default mode is just do MMA or jiu-jitsu, which is fucking boring and dumb. Like, there's no creativity in a lot of like mainstream, or like, I guess it is maybe a North American thing, but there's just a lot of rolling arm bars and knee bars that you can just like very quickly reverse out of and counter, and just like a lot of like judo throws and rolls, but like there's no damage done from them, and you just sort of like transition to the next thing. Like, from a technical standpoint, yeah, it looks good because you were doing these like big elaborate controlled fight scenes, but like every single movie doesn't have to involve like, oh, I've got an arm bar on, and like this bad guy put the arm bar on me, and like I'm about to choke out, I'm about to die, and then I can just, oh, but I have the last moment of strength, and I'm gonna throw my arm over, and I'll get out of it and roll him out of it, and like, no, that's not how any of that works. And like, maybe that's like from an MMA purist, even though I'm not, because I stopped watching UFC years ago. But like, not everything needs to be jiu-jitsu. You know, you can do like regular fight scenes or incorporate just like bits and pieces of it, or like other styles of fighting that don't have to be that specific grapply roll around stuff. It's very overdone and very uninteresting when you see the same moves done over and over again. I'm always surprised when I watch a movie and I go like, wow, I guess, like, yeah, I don't even know, like I can't think of the specific reference, but it's like, oh wow, I didn't realize that the ancient Romans invented jiu-jitsu, or like stuff like that. Or maybe that was me saying that about Gladiator 2, because I was like, oh, I guess they didn't invent jiu-jitsu back then, because there wasn't any of that in the movie. So like, it doesn't always need to be that. Is he Haru? Are you Haru? Shut up. I'm not letting him in. I don't care what he says. But yeah, like, I wonder if there is a universe somewhere where MMA like died off in the 90s and all the action movies don't involve like rear naked chokes that are way too easy to get out of. But like, yeah, I really enjoyed the cheesiness of some of the dialogue. There was a lot of stupid pop culture references from Kano, which I did not enjoy, but like, it was very fun. The ending was kind of silly because they do have like the final showdown like inside of an octagon in a gym, which is kind of stupid, but like, whatever. I enjoyed watching the movie, and that's all I care about at this point, is enjoying watching movies. So then the next one that was like it was on the list and then it got cut. I mean, Mortal Kombat was never in the top 10. It was in the favorites. These two at one point or another were considered for the top 10 and have since been moved down into the favorites, and then now have been moved down into the honorable mentions. Old Henry, which again, I don't know why people don't talk about this more, but sure. It is Tim Blake Nelson. It is a straight up Western that like, it's really hard to do Westerns in this day and age because they just like never seem to look like they used to, unless they're like a very huge budget film. But yeah, this is like right up my alley. This is the kind of movie I like. I like Westerns. I like Tim Blake Nelson. He did a really good job. He was believable because it's kind of an out of character role for him. There was a little bit of bad CG, but I'm like, or a CGI blood, but I can like overlook that because they probably were trying to like not damage costumes or not damage sets or something. But yeah, he's a widower on a farm with a son, and they take in an injured man who happens to have some money, and then a bunch of bad guys show up and claim that they're the law, and they're looking for the guy, and turns out that Tim Blake is like an old school like sharpshooter, like gunslinger, and it just takes the road of a Western from there. But yeah, it's really, really well done. Like, again, not a lot of Westerns get made, and if they do, they're like very big budget things that just like have a big scale and big huge stars in it, and this really doesn't. It's like Tim Blake and Stephen Dorff are like the only, and that's really the only like big name actors in it. So really well done. I love Westerns. I love Tim Blake. Yeah, I wish I didn't have to cut it, but there's just so many other things that were kind of above it. And then the other one that I think deserves an honorable mention, which kind of goes in the theme of some of the movies I've talked about in here, which is Mad God, which is a 30 years in the making, like claymation stop motion horror movie, directed by a guy named Phil Tippett, who like probably nobody would know his name, but he's the person that has done like every practical visual effect for like a lot of very, very big and famous movies, like original Jurassic Park, Return of the Jedi, Temple of Doom, RoboCop, Starship Troopers, Willow, Howard the Duck, Dragonheart. Like, he did a lot of the actual practical visual effects for all these like incredible big blockbuster movies, some of the Twilight movies. But that this was like his passion project. Like, this is the thing he spent his entire adult life like working on his own behind the scenes, and then finally put it out. And like, it's, again, I don't know that it's like an amazing movie, because it's just it's about like a sort of a futuristic apocalypse kind of thing, like a nightmarish hellscape where like all the things of like hell and darkness have come to be, and everybody's like tortured, and it's just like this one figure, this one character that is just sort of like moving through the hellscape and witnessing all these like scary monsters and these horrible like people being ripped apart and killed and murdered and blood and like all these like, and the heat and fire and blah, like it's just like it's a real like look through hell. But just like how cool it is that it's all stop motion animation done by one guy that he spent 30 years making, and it's like the thing he loves the most. Like, that's, for me, that's more than enough to get like talked about on the podcast and like get it put in this list. It's like a very, very unique and cool thing to what it is. And it's like I wish I wanted to put it on the list, and then I was just like going through everything, and I was like, ugh. Like, I'd have to sacrifice something for this, and then I'd be mad about the sacrifice I made for this. So, unfortunately, it was like one of my very, very last cuts, and I just couldn't keep it as much as I wanted to. And then I've got a few left now, which are so this one I'm sure I'm going to have to answer for, which is the one that I didn't mention before, but that is Ryosuke Hamagachi's Drive My Car. Even though it was nominated for Oscars and stuff, and you know, like, people liked it. This is maybe a spoiler for it's kind of a spoiler for the top 10, but it's not even his best movie in my opinion of 2021. There is another movie he made that is in my top 10 that I consider to be a more entertaining and better movie. There's literally there's nothing wrong with this movie. Like, it is a very well put together movie, and it's just at times too slow for me, and that's from somebody who does like slow burn dramatic stuff. But like, when I initially reviewed it, I was like, you know, maybe I'm not in the right mindset for it. Like, maybe I needed to be in a different mood or something. But like, I just, the bleak setting was great, and the acting, and then the very vague story elements I enjoyed, but there was a lot of wasted time. Maybe this was like, I said, like, maybe this is better suited for like a series or like a mini series, because then you could actually like focus a little bit more on the more specific and important like pieces, as opposed to like having to step away from them for a little while, and then when you come back and you're like, oh yeah, I guess this is sort of like what's happening. Because like there's a couple like big reveals and big moments that happen at certain points in the movie that like I would like a little bit more focus on, a little bit more fleshed out, and then you're like, oh, we're moving on from that. So but yeah, by no means is it a bad movie. It is there's a stage actor director dealing with the loss of his wife, and he reluctantly agrees to come out of sort of like retirement, sort of, to direct a very famous play at this festival in Hiroshima. And he meets a woman who's been assigned to be his driver, and then over the course of like casting and meeting people, and then like he has sort of a grudge against one of the other male actors who he's casting, and then there's like big secrets from the past that involve some of the people that he's been interacting with, and all the things that led up to like his wife and like it is a very well put together story. I just wish that they had spent more time on certain things and less time on nothing, because there was a lot of nothing that was focused on, and I just didn't really enjoy it. And again, I think it's his second best movie of the year. How many left? I got 4 left, and then we can wrap this shit up. In traditional fashion, Pedro Almodovar put out a movie out this year in 2021, and it was exceptionally good. But I had to cut something from my list, and it was one of the very, very last cuts I had to make. Like if you're familiar with Almodovar, guess what? He's gay. He has weird issues with his mom. Because that's every one of his movies. But they're always really good. Like, they're always incredible movies. It's got the person who almost exclusively always plays his mother in movies, Penelope Cruz. And yeah, so it's like there's maybe too much going on, but it's good because it like breaks it up and makes the story move a little bit. So like Penelope is an older woman, and she and her partner decide to accidentally get pregnant, and she's in the middle of having God, why my brain is just fucking. She is researching the history of her family, and she would like to have. She's trying to find her grandfather's grandfather's grave, whatever. That he was killed during the Spanish Civil War, and he's buried in like a mass grave, and it's something that like for her family's history, she wants to do and find where he was buried, and she's sort of like looking for the details and of where everything is and how to get it and blah blah. Then she unexpectedly gets pregnant, and she ends up going and meeting when she's in the hospital. She meets a teenage girl who's also been, unfortunately impregnated, but she's, not in a good place about being pregnant. And so Penelope kind of like looks after her as a mother figure and kind of helps her deal with the process. And then they both have their babies, and then they go home. And then after a while, Penelope kind of like isn't certain that the baby is her baby. Just like weird things, people say stuff that like it doesn't look like her and it doesn't look like the guy, or like they kept asking who the guy is. And so she eventually gets a paternity test done, and it turns out that the baby isn't hers, that the 2 babies got switched at birth. And so she actually has the teenage girl's baby and vice versa. And because she's already formed an emotional attachment to the baby, then she kind of decides like, I'm not going to say anything and I'm just going to raise the baby. But then, fast forward a little bit, she runs into the girl, and it turns out that the girl's baby, which is actually Penelope's real birth child, died of a crib death, like not that far after they parted ways. And so now she sort of has this like, she's sad because her real baby is dead, but now she's guilty because she's raising this girl's baby. So then she sort of like hires her to be her live-in nanny for her real daughter. Like the teenager comes to be the live-in nanny to look after her real daughter, who is Penelope's fake daughter, but she's like not good at it, right? And so Penelope is kind of pushing her to like, you should be really nice to the baby because maybe the baby is yours. And it's like there's a lot of things going on, and then there's like the whole subplot of the Spanish Civil War and finding the great grandfather or grandfather's grave and blah blah. But like, it's really well acted. It's a really it's a really Almodovar movie. The only real thing I thought of was like are all Spanish men just like the most potent? Do their swimmers swim all the way until they're like 90? Because she's like not a young woman in this movie, and she gets pregnant like after one time, like incredibly fast. And I'm gonna say am I gonna find out her age? 1974. So she's not exactly a spring chicken at this point, and she gets pregnant real fast. But yeah, like it is sort of like a Almodovar movie, and if you've seen one, maybe you've seen them all. It's still really good, but you know, he does a lot of the same kind of stuff. At least the representation of his mother in this is not that she's a whore, because he does that a lot. All right, the final three that were hard to cut. I did the Lost Daughter, which was directed by Maggie Gilly as opposed to Jake Gilly. It stars Olivia Colman, and you know what, like it's a really, I don't know that the movie's nothing, but it is very much a performance-based movie. Like, Olivia Colman is incredible in it. She's very powerful. She's like a lonely woman who goes on a vacation at a seaside resort, and there's like this big, huge family of Greek people at this resort, like on the beach, that are like locals, and she sort of realizes that there's like a young daughter that, like, you know, a child, and she's sort of focuses in on the child and like ends up stealing the child's like little doll thing or stuffed animal, which causes a lot of tension in like with the family, because now the daughter's upset and blah blah, and she's sort of like really holding on to this, and it's sort of about her loss and her grief of her past and a child and everything. And then she sort of starts getting a little bit too close and too involved with the family, while also like hiding the secret that she's sort of been like at a distance trying to like be involved in the little girl's life, because she wants to sort of relive the trauma, or like fill the hole of the trauma of her life. And like, yeah, I mean, the movie's not incredibly great or anything. Like, it looks nice, but like, yeah, it's just like the performance of Olivia Colman is like incredible. And Dakota Johnson, she's like the mom of the child. She's really good. She does a really good job as well. But like, yeah, I mean, if the movie was a little bit more entertaining or interesting, or a little bit more happened, like there were times where they would build up to something and my brain would think like, oh, this is going to happen. And then like, oh, okay, it didn't happen. Like, you know, maybe a little bit more action had happened. I think it would maybe have stayed in the list, but like, it was definitely one of the last cuts for me. And then the last two actual final cuts, so number 11 and number 12 in theory, would be maybe not a popular opinion, but I don't know. Ridley Scott's The Last Duel. I like big Ridley Scott epics. I think he's one of my favorite directors as far as like big scale stuff and big productions that he does. But and like this was good. I did really enjoy the concept of the movie. I like the visuals of it, that it was like kind of dark and gritty, grimy. Like, it looked like it was based in King Charles the sixth time. But I'm not too like the acting and performances were kind of the problem for me. Not that I don't like, you know, I like the people involved. I like Jodie Comer. I like Matt Damon. I like Adam Driver. I tolerate Ben Affleck a lot of the time. I just don't know that the casting choices were great. It is fun, I guess, to see those guys do things outside of their normal acting, but like, you know, there was only one minor, and by minor I mean major issue, and he was born in Boston and he's got a sick back tattoo. Like, he was really, really poorly cast. I did not care for his work at all. I thought he was awful. Outside of that, though, like, the story is incredible. I like really liked the pacing and the way that everything moved. I liked that it was a little bit more violent than I was expecting it to be. But like, it was exactly what I'd want from a Ridley Scott movie. It was hard maybe to look at Adam Driver as a bad guy, because I think like his style of acting is very charming and he's very likable. But having him walk that line was a little tough. But it's because I don't care about the Star Wars movies, and obviously he's a villain in that. But like I really liked the movie. Maybe better casting choices would be better, especially Ben Affleck, not being Ben Affleck. But yeah, I enjoyed it. I did not hate it. But it was something that like I wanted to like a little bit more, and then maybe would have made the list. Yeah. And the final one that I had to cut, which again, I'm not super thrilled about, was Paolo Sorrentino's The Hand of God. I will say that he's very clearly got some repressed sexual stuff with his aunt, because that's a big part of the movie. But it's like, it's unique, it's weird, it's got some really risque subject matter across the whole movie. There was some very good laughs, and then also just like some super depressing shit that happens, and it's it's all over the place. I'm feeling like maybe at the end of this I'm going to come back to it and be like, maybe I should have kept it in over something, but at this point I'm not really willing to make that decision. So yeah, I mean, it's based in the 80s in Italy. There's an awkward teenager who's kind of struggling with everything, like in his life, like being free, like getting old enough that you have the freedom to do what you want, and then like sexual urges and love, especially sexual urges towards his smoking hot aunt. But yeah, like there's like a whole thing with Diego Maradona, which is like why it's called The Hand of God, because in a World Cup in the 80s, he cheated by touching the ball with his hand, and nobody seemed to care about it. Or if they did, then nothing ever happened from it. I'm like kind of lukewarm on Sorrentino's work. I like some, and I'm only okay on other ones, especially like some of the more obscure, like the Sean Penn one. And then he did the Pope that bangs, and then the other Pope that knows the Pope bangs. Those the new Pope and the young Pope. But I haven't seen those yet. I'm just saying, like, I haven't watched those yet. But that's because they're series, and I don't watch series. Yeah, I mean, it was well acted. Like I said, the aunt was smoking hot, and you get to see a lot of her. But yeah, he's got some real issues with older female family members that he should get looked after. Yeah, so that's the ones that were like, those are all the honorable mentions, and the ones that were like the hardest to cut, the final cuts and everything. And I was going to do the worst and the favorites on here, but I feel like we're running at a good runtime at this point, so I'm not going to stretch out, because I mean, for worst, I've got a lot. So I'm going to add those to the beginning of next episode, just so I don't do like another 40-ish minutes, because I feel like it's a lot more palatable when it is only an hour 45 or a little bit more. So, and plus I have to go get Cannibal the Musical, so I don't want to miss out on that. So yeah, I'm going to sign off now. Those were all of the honorable mentions for 2021. And next week's episode, you will be hearing all of the worst movies of 2021, the 3 favorite movies that I had from the year that weren't on the list, and the exact top 10 of my rankings for the movies of the year of our Lord 2021. Which Lord is that? Allah, who's to say? Please take care of yourself, and follow or whatever. Letterboxd is most important. I will put the lists out of the actual movies on Letterboxd if you want to just go there and find them, and so you can see where to watch them or whatever, or read proper reviews for them. You can do that. And then All Request Live Spectacular will be happening whenever you people start sending me things. You know who you are. $50 for anything 2 hours and 10 minutes or less. And if you want me to get a second host, then guess what? You're paying a little bit more. So you'll pay $100 for 2 people, $50 for 1. And I'll start recording those maybe like the first week of April and go from there. So hopefully things work out, and I'll talk to you again next week. Bye.